Well, I think we look as, having been a high school player as well as playing in college, and but also going back to even my younger years as a youth, I can tell you I learned so much from sports, and I think it's really transferred over to areas and now working in a business environment. Obviously being able to work with people with different personalities, and how do we accept who people are, but also try to strategize to move an organization forward. It's amazing how much we really learned from sports, that we've got to work with people that maybe just aren't like us, and that teamwork is something that's huge for us to understand, that we can focus on keeping the goal as our central point. And I think if we can strategize and plan out ways to go forward, whatever it may be, I think that's a valuable lesson we learn in sports. I think the other part is that we learn to really think through, how do we build people up around us? How do we encourage them? How do we make sure that they have means of developing relationships and building their confidence? And that's no different in business world. If we have to build up a teammate, having been a soccer player, I was a defender, and my midfielders need to be playing well, and my forwards line need to be playing well for us to be successful. But I think that's something that also transfers over to the same, like I said, in the business world. I need to build up my midfielders, and I need to build up my forwards on a soccer team. But there's no difference in that of any partners that you're working with, or any of your staff, or the group that you're leading. You need to make sure that you're building them up, pouring into them, and encouraging them in their strengths, and being able to capitalize on their most valuable talents that they bring to an organization. And I think sports really taught me that. And I think with looking for an organization setting, and running a business now that I do, it is absolutely amazing how much every day what I did in sports has transferred over to what I'm doing every day. Absolutely. So for me, I was an elementary education major when I was in doing my undergrad and at the university. And I started teaching, and inevitably one of the local groups needed a soccer coach. And so I started actually coaching while I was in undergrad, and I started getting my feet wet in coaching. And with that, of course, turned into getting my feet wet in a lot of other sports. And so I started coaching the under 14s team, and then it was, hey, can you help out with the under 12s? And oh, by the way, the under 16 team and the under 18 team need some help. Can you help out in those? And I became a director of coaching for a club, and at the age of, I think it was about 20. And so I was helping it with coaching education programs with a lot of parent coaches in the organization I was working in. And it allowed me to get a lot of experience. It led to me also being a high school varsity head coach. And so I started to get a lot of experience in coaching while I was still, in my late teens and early 20s. And that actually led to me wanting to do my master's and my graduate work in exercise sports science with an emphasis in sports management. So that led for me to kind of start the process of being a college coach here in the United States. And I did that for 14 years. I was on staff at the University of Florida as a graduate assistant and worked with their team. So while I was studying my master's, I continued to get more coaching experience, work with one of the top women's programs literally in the United States. We've had many national team players and such that have played for us. And it allowed me an opportunity to just study under other coaches and to really learn what it's like to train teams at a very high level. And so that kind of took my coaching career in the right direction for 14 years. Then from there is, I stepped away about a year and a half ago from the coaching world, and really now going into coaching education programs. I also help a lot of high school student athletes with the college recruiting process, and I do a lot of leadership development training programs. And so, it's been definitely a journey, since I was in college, and then going to my master's degree and my graduate work, and then my coaching career, and then now changing into business. And so it's been a journey, and I think it's something that I dabbled put my toes in the water a little bit, as a freshman and sophomore, my first couple of years in college. But it's been an amazing journey to realize that all just started because somebody asked me, hey, will you help out with those under 14 little girls? And never would I imagine where it would lead to, for sure. Absolutely. For me, my career was ended in terms of playing because of injuries. And I think that was really hard. I ended up having a surgery on my ankle, later had a surgery on my knee. And so my injuries pretty much restricted my long-term continuous ability to play after college. And so, it was definitely a struggle. And the mental side of that is very challenging because so much of our identity is wrapped up in being an athlete. And so, we look and we say, how do we transition? And one thing is obviously being around coaching. I was still around the game and being able to, be active. And, but it is definitely something you have to be much more intentional about because you don't have a coach yelling at you to keep yourself fit. But I think also surrounding yourself with other people that will help keep you accountable and keep you healthy. I definitely do not train the ways I did when I was in college anymore, but I'm still very active, and I live in Florida, which is a beautiful weather pretty much about 11 months out of the year. And so, I'm active, and, I'm a big, I try and get my 10,000 steps every day walking. And around the area here, I have some beautiful lakes to walk and being active. I don't go out and play anymore. I do watch quite a bit, and also still dabble in coaching here and there. But I think it is a struggle, and I think it's something that's not spoken about very often when you're going to leave, your actual playing days. And I've witnessed a lot of my athletes when I was coaching them that there was a huge struggle the years after their careers ended in terms of many would have a lot of weight gain. Many would still be eating, these high calorie diets, but not being active. I've tried to keep my diet on track, but, and, obviously my activity level has dropped a little bit compared to when I was playing and running, 5-7 miles a day. But I think, being active and finding other ways that are fun, whether that's swimming and, not having impact, on your joints and muscles, or if it's just finding other ways to be active with friends and a fitness class or, CrossFit or something like that, I think has been ways to find it that you can still be competitive and also have accountability, I think is very key. But, still finding also ways to be active that may not be in your talent strength zone. I can tell you, hopping on a bike, I'm not very competitive when it comes to biking or swimming, but it's still fun to me to go out and do. I'm not exactly the fastest swimmer of all times, but it's still fun and it's still a different way to be active. And I think it's finding that way, and it's something that we don't often prepare our athletes for. And having witnessed that, I've seen a lot of my athletes have depression the first 2 years, especially out of their playing career finishing. Well, I think, for a lot of the college athletes that I worked with, I think I would always remind them that you're not guaranteed tomorrow in terms of playing. And, obviously I've witnessed a lot of girls go through ACL injuries and other things where, too many concussions or things like that, where their career gets cut short. And so one of the things that we really focused on is making sure that they were reminded of that you're not promised tomorrow in terms of your athletics. And so we have to prepare. And obviously being at the college level, we were always just making sure that they realized that getting their education was number one, because we always said, we're going to be in 10 years, most likely you're not going to be playing, if you are, awesome, great. I want tickets to wherever you're playing professionally. But, and I've had some players go off and play professionally, but, that's a very slim few. And so we need to make sure that we're having that, especially, I think in the college realm, to reminding them that they need to get an education and prepare for, if they want to go into nursing or if they want to go into business, or maybe they want to become a journalist, whatever it may be, is that we need to make sure that we have that as a priority in terms of what they're doing every day. And, that school does matter, and keeping on their academics. We hounded them with that. To me, I always said my big success story is not wins, and whether we win regional championships or we win coach of the year titles or all Americans. We just said, the way we looked at it is my biggest win and my biggest success and championship was watching my players walk across the stage at graduation, after 4 years of getting a degree. And to me, that was always my success. And I always try and remind my college players that I probably cried more at those events than I was crying at their senior day or winning a championship, because I knew how much that could change their lives. And I wanted to do as much as I could to make sure they were on track. And, I keep in touch with a lot of my alumni, and it's really fun to see them, 5, 7, 10 years later, where they're grown, have successful careers. They may be married with kids, and now they're being amazing moms. And, a couple of them are calling me saying, hey, I'm coaching my 4-year-old. Absolutely. I think there is. If you don't have a focus of being disciplined in academics, I've seen it go two different ways. I've seen it go that they were so focused that it became an obsession, and they didn't have any balance in their life. And I think that that's unhealthy. It's very much unhealthy. Obviously, I was working with college student athletes, so I was working for them to be in an academic setting. But I've been around other athletes who've not chosen to go the academic route and play in college, and I've also seen them go the opposite direction, where they were excelling in their sport because they were focusing on it. And so I think there's a healthy balance there that needs to happen. I loved working with college student athletes because I think they had a really healthy balance. They might not say that. They might have felt like they were overwhelmed all the time. But I think, balancing out school and soccer. But I think it's really important that that athletes have a balance as a perspective, because the majority of them are not going to go off and play professionally. I think it's the percentage in the United States is something like 3%. It depends on which sport, but around there, are going to go play professionally. So we wanted to utilize the academic setting to prepare them for the real world. And where are you going to be in 10 years, whether that's as a mom, or as a wife, and, and also businesswoman, whatever it may be, is that we wanted to make sure that we help them keep that perspective. And, so it didn't, that soccer didn't become an obsession. But again, there were a few athletes that I've seen be successful. And it's funny because one of my players that ended up with being an All-American and ended up actually playing overseas professionally, now works in the front office and doing some work with United States Soccer. So she's still in the game, even though she's not playing anymore. They have so many. I think with social media, I remember sending my first email when I was a freshman in college. So a little bit different perspective. The recruiting aspect, and just in order to get seen on the college recruiting process, is completely different than what it was for me. For me, a college coach called me and we chatted, and then I sent them my VHS tape, versus now, with YouTube and all those things, it's definitely different. But also, I think, that college coaches are really checking up on them, and what decisions they're making on social media. I think it is a detriment for some of them, because they're always feeling that they've got to compare to this next level, and they can always Google something. They can always find out the answer to what is a college coach looking for. And I think that it puts a lot more stress on them. And college kids today, man, I watch them and go, they have so many more challenges than what we had growing up. And, everyone's going to be able to publicly criticize their performance now. And, whether that's on Twitter or Instagram or whatever the next, thing, Snapchat or whatever, that, they're having to often face criticisms that just didn't exist when I was playing. And, I think it's scary, and it can be helpful in some regards. They can receive recognition, across the world and such. But I think there's also, it's also scary for them, and protection of as well for their identity, and also their mental health, and where they think that, their careers can go. So I've seen a little bit of that too, and they're worried and concerned about what people are going to think on social media. I think that's a scary part of the whole process. Actually doing a lot of coaching education programs. And what I find is a lot of young coaches are very scared to step into a role to coach. And what I always look and say, okay, you got the technical aspects of the sport. You know how to play the game tactically as well. You know how to make decisions. But what they're not educated on is understanding young kids and where they're at in terms of their conceptualization and understanding of the game, and how to teach the game. So I do a lot of coaching education programs. Just a few weeks ago, I was working with a club system, and there was some parents in the room who got suckered in, I think that's the right word to say, into coaching. And then on the other hand, we had some young coaches. They were 18, 19, 20 years old, and they knew the sport really well, as opposed to the parent coaches were going, oh gosh, I don't even know. I don't know the sport. I don't know the basics. And what it was is really teaching them, the aspects of understanding how to coach a young child. What do you do with 5-year-olds versus what do you do with 14-year-olds? And I think that's a huge part of the coaching education programs that I do. But also, what type of language should we be speaking to them, and how should we build up those athletes? Again, that 5-year-old versus the 12-year-old, two different conversations versus an 18-year-old. And what should we do to help them? And I think I try to take those barriers away and try to help them through that process, as well as, obviously we want to get more women involved in coaching and continue to stay in coaching. I'm a part of the NCAA here in the United States has a amazing organization called the Women's Coaches Alliance. And what it does is to help female coaches stay in the game in often male-dominated careers, and to be able to help them. And so I am active in that as well, and helping with just building confidence in coaches. And now the other aspect of my business is I help high school student athletes with the college recruiting process. And my upcoming book is on the college recruiting process to help educate high school student athletes and their families, whether they're international students who want to come play in the United States, or if they're just Americans who want to play. But there's a lot of misinformation that's out there. And so I go out and do a lot of recruiting seminars. I do a lot of information as well over the internet and webinars and such. But my book will be coming out this spring. It's called Looking for a Full Ride, an Insider's Recruiting Guide. And I also run blogs. I release a blog every week on the college recruiting process to help educate people, as well as I run 2 different Facebook groups. One is for parents of high school student athletes. Again, it could be in the United States or in the UK, or also across down Australia as well. But just be able to educate families on the process. And so, it's working in sport, but it's working in a different avenue. And so everyone always asks, why are you in this industry and what you're doing now? And I said, I love a strategic plan. I'm a coach at heart. And so now what I'm doing is I'm helping high school student athletes strategically plan how to get to find that opportunity for a scholarship and an education. And just like I'm doing with the coaching education programs, I'm helping them strategically plan how to be an effective coach and leader. And so I get to utilize the skills that I learned as a coach to be able to transition to help others and help the game grow, and to be able to make an impact on a much higher level. Well, I had been doing seminars for all the years I was coaching college, and I would go into groups and organizations, whether it was the YMCA or Boys and Girls Clubs or different sports organizations or high schools, and I would educate them on the recruiting process. Inevitably, for 14 years, somebody would walk up to me and say, Renee, you need to write a book on that. And for 14 years, I kept saying, no, I'm not interested. So as I was trying to transition, out of college coaching, I decided that I wanted to really explore ways that I continue helping student athletes, and to help them strategically plan what their next steps would be. And so what I've done is I found an amazing publisher with Black Card Books, and they are a worldwide publishing company. It's amazing to work with them. And they actually get down to your neck of the woods a little bit in Sydney and Melbourne once or twice a year, and in Malaysia and the UK and all throughout the United States and Canada. And basically what they have allowed me to do is really help writing to educate. And that's, to me, my first and primary focus. It's really to help those athletes who just don't understand it. We watch in the media how we think it's going to go. A lot of people here in the US watch the movie The Blind Side. They think that that's the way that kids get recruited. And it is farther from the truth than you'll ever imagine. And so I usually start my seminars out with saying, you've all seen The Blind Side? Okay, delete everything of what you have in that mindset and what you've seen, because it's not how it goes. And teaching them how to market themselves to college coaches. And what we've done is we've actually interviewed 40 college coaches across all sports, and you know, on men's and women's sports, and all different levels of divisions in you know, from junior colleges for 2-year colleges here all the way up to Division 3, Division 2, Division 1 coaches in, you know, American football to gymnastics to swimming and field hockey and volleyball and baseball and softball. I could go on for hours. We've done 40 different interviews with coaches and asking them, what do you want from kids in the recruiting process? And what do you want from parents? And so being able to educate families on that process has been really fun for me. And like I said, if it's something you're interested in, you know, we are running blogs once a week to release, and then you can also get on our website, and it's www.rlopezcoaching.com, www.rlopezcoaching.com. And you know what it does is you can get on there and see a lot of the information we're releasing just on a weekly basis. And then you can also join our parents Facebook groups. And then once our book comes out this spring, we'll definitely notify you on the process and helping to educate kids.